Alright, what is up YouTube? Today I'm riding the 2023 Indian Sport Chief. You can see here we have very high bar risers on this particular bike, and I believe the Chief is one of Indian's newest models here. I've never ridden this bike before. It's been a while since I've ridden an Indian motorcycle at all. So immediately I see the nice round gauge, the digital display here. It looks exactly like what Harley's offering on their bikes. They have this round digital display as well. So initially the throttle's a little touchy, but I am in sport mode. Maybe my fault for starting in sport mode, but yeah, the throttle is a little touchy in sport mode. Very on-off. The front brake feels pretty grabby, and there's a good amount of suspension dive in the front using the brakes. These are Brembo brakes on the front, so they do have a ton of stopping power. Low speed in sport mode here though. I mean, it definitely wants to go. It's very on-off throttle. It's begging you to just give it some power here. And it has a ton of power. So let's see, let's change it back to standard mode. Alright, so we're in standard mode now. The throttle's definitely a lot less touchy. Let's go back to second. Oh yeah, the throttle's a lot smoother in standard mode than sport mode. And when you roll on the throttle, it does take a little bit more. It doesn't give you all the power right initially like sport mode does. The bike feels very light though when you're at speed. Definitely feels like it's flickable. Very easy to turn over. Now I do like this seating position for shorter rides. I do like ape hangers and bar risers. I wouldn't want to ride all day on this, but around town this would be pretty fun. It does give you a different feeling when you're riding. The friction zone is pretty vague, probably because the throttle's so smooth, and the friction zone is just very vague, so I don't really know where to let it out. Luckily the bike does have enough torque to start moving when you do get to the friction zone. So we're just chilling in third gear here, going very low RPM. So if we're comparing to Harley Davidson, because that's really the only comparison to the Indian motorcycles here, cruiser wise, the Nightster S. Quick editor's note, I'm comparing this bike to the Nightster S because they ride very similar. Price and power wise, this bike compares more with the Harley Street Bob or the Lowrider S, for example. Now this bike does have some good horsepower, so really good power numbers. This is a 116 cubic inch engine. But yeah, standard mode is very smooth. Let's put it back in sport mode. And this fidgeting with the screen is pretty distracting, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, wow. Sport mode just so different. Coming to a stop here. Very easy to balance at low speeds. This touchscreen looks pretty nice and it works pretty well. I mean, I can touch this through the gloves here. You can see there's different screens, estimated range, fuel economy. You can track your rides. It's got a GPS as well, gear indicator, RPM, and speed and temperature. The letting out the clutch here is a little bit vague. Fairly easy clutch pull, but it seems like the clutch likes to just engage. There's not too much friction zone. Oh yeah, she's got some power. This engine doesn't rev very high. It only goes up to 5,000 RPM before it redlines. That just means it makes a ton of torque down low right off the bat. So even fourth gear at 2,000 RPM, I can roll on the throttle here. The gear shifter is pretty clunky. I don't know, on a bike like this, I don't mind it. It's contributing to the experience. It lets you know that you're actually in gear. But yeah, rolling through the gears here is very easy. This bike feels very stable at speeds here. I'm not getting pushed around by any wind. It just wants to stay in one specific line on the lane here. So it doesn't feel like it just wants to turn over, constantly turn left to right. You get a little bit of technology, not a ton, but you do get a lot of horsepower, a lot of acceleration, a lot of torque. The bike sounds good. Bike looks really good as well. And it's an Indian motorcycle, so you know you're getting a good product with Indian. But yeah, it does have cruise control as well. Other than that, there's not a ton to look at on the actual handlebars, just standard motorcycle controls. Yeah, you really don't need to give it a very much throttle before it just wants to take off. The seating position is pretty good. I feel like I'm pretty much straight up. The seat on here has a cup in the back, so it cups your butt from rolling backwards at all. So it keeps you pretty much in place on your seat. And my arms are pretty outstretched. Like, I don't really have a ton of slack here to relax my arms. I think if the bars were lower, you'd probably have a little bit more slack to let your arms relax. But because the bars are so tall, it really requires you to reach. I think it would take me a little bit longer to learn this clutch and just take off very smoothly, especially in sport mode, where it just wants to give you all the power at once. But standard mode was nice and smooth. So go around this corner here. Pretty easy going around corners. I don't feel it's particularly difficult, more difficult than any other bike, really. It does sound really good rolling on the throttle. It's got some good acceleration. Couple that with the sound. Let's go to 6 as well. So we're 6th gear, 45 miles an hour. It's pretty smooth. There's some vibrations in the handlebars, but not a ton anywhere else in the bike. Obviously V-twins are going to vibrate. That's just part of their nature. But yeah, 6th gear, under 2,000 RPM, there's not much power there, obviously. 5th gear, a little bit more power. I feel like there's a sweet spot in this RPM range. It's like right in the middle, 2,000 to 4,000 RPM. There's a good sweet spot of power. Lower than that, there's not much there. The seat height is pretty good. A very low sitting bike. I'm 5'11", my knees are very bent. And you can see the foot controls are slightly forward from the knee. So I have the gear shifter up here, and foot pegs are slightly forward. Overall, pretty comfortable position. It's not a full clamshell position. So let's lean it over here. Oh yeah, it feels great leaning it over. And then it's got the power to come out of that corner. I do like the way it leans over. I feel like I can lean it over pretty far and so I'm not going to scrape. It does feel like it has some good lean angle. Yeah, it feels great going around that corner here. Yeah, it's got a ton of power. You can just feel it everywhere. It's got some good pull to it. It feels so good rolling on the throttle, hearing that sound. It's the whole experience, really. I do like it better than the Nightster Special. The Nightster was too quiet. This one actually has a nice exhaust on it. Get on the brakes here, nice and smooth. Yeah, the brakes aren't too touchy. Brakes are not too touchy, they're just right. You don't get a ton of front brake lever pull here. It engages very quickly. And these are Brembo brakes, so they definitely stop you as needed. She's got some power. She's not slow, that's for sure. The power does taper off in the upper RPMs though. I can definitely feel that. So there's like a good mid-range power band, and then below and above that there's not a ton of power. So we're doing 70 here. I'm getting a lot of wind right now, a lot of wind blast, but I'm not being pushed around at all. So maybe a little bit, but the bike is pretty stable at higher speeds here. There's not a ton of vibration at 70 miles an hour, 6th gear. I'm getting a little bit through the handlebars, but it's not too bad. I think after a few hours, you definitely feel your hands tingling. And so there's a little bit of power if I roll on the throttle in 6th gear. I'd probably want to downshift for a little bit extra power. And I would say this is not necessarily a touring bike, obviously. This is probably more suited for short rides around town, short canyon rides. I wouldn't really want to tour on this necessarily. There's a lot of wind blasts. the vibrations are gonna get tiring after a while. So I did ride the whole Harley lineup a few weeks ago, so I am going to be comparing this bike to those. And I mean, let's be real, Harley is going to be the real competition for Indian. So far I do really like this bike. It does vibrate quite a bit more than I expected. The pipes get pretty hot down by my ankles and my legs, so that's something to watch out for. You got to keep your stance wide if you're at a stop. Don't want to rest on that pipe too long. That's a very hot pipe, and there was a lot of engine heat coming out here at a stop. Pretty unavoidable on a lot of bikes. I do like that they incorporated some technology here, different ride mode, GPS, quite a bit for a standard cruiser, but everything else is going up in price as well. Even Harley's Nightster is $13,000 MSRP. I like how powerful it is. It's definitely got a good power band, easy to ride, fairly easy to ride, and it just feels like an old style cruiser. I think that's kind of what I like most about it. It feels like what Harleys used to feel like, going back to the roots but with modern comforts. Yeah, it handles great. Even with these higher handlebars, I don't feel like it's really compromised handling at all. It just feels really easy to ride if you have experience. This is a lot of power for a beginner. I would not recommend this as a beginner bike. That's going to be more suited on the Scout 60. This is a lot of bike and a lot of power and a lot of price for a beginner. Overall, great bike, great offering. Just a little bit pricey, I'm not gonna lie.